At the very opening remark, the Director General of Foreign Trade said 70% increase in bilateral trade despite the COVID pandemic. That itself was a big eye-opener. That shows how we have managed, despite the two countries have managed, despite the challenges of the pandemic. And the ICT manufacturing in India, manufacturing and supply to India from Taiwan, apart from the EMS, is foraying pretty much into semiconductors, also in small ways. But I would like to give one parallel of what happened maybe about 2 decades ago in the automotive sector, when major Japanese and Korean manufacturers like the Toyotas and the Hondas and the Hyundais set up their manufacturing unit in India. And they were at that time coming in with very low-end, small, and very small or entry medium level kind of cars for the Indian market. And I think today, after 20 years, all of them are exporting their cars to global locations made out of India. So that's one success story that I keep talking about every time I talk about semiconductor and the semiconductors roadmap, how we have already made it happen in a complex system like in automotive. It is definitely possible in any other segment. But having said that, to answer to your question, Dr. Ho, India's strength today, when in respect to semiconductors, is in design. And Ms. Rituparna is there from MediaTek. She will vouch for what I'm saying. India probably is today the second biggest semiconductor design powerhouse in the world after the US and after the Bay Area. We have practically every design, every semiconductor company having a major design presence in the country. And I think our and this is just maybe 15 years old, not even 15 years old, less than that. Maybe 2007, 2008 is when this started growing, and in about 12, 13 years, our design value is of the order of about 25 to 30 billion, very comparable to what was presented as the design value of Taiwan. So this is definitely one strength that we have, and products for the world are getting designed out of India. Now, it was the conventional ASICs and system on chip where I started designing 2.5 decades back. But today they are foraying very comfortably and confidently to the new technology application domains like AI, ML, IoT, 5G, etc. So that transformation of the design community to adapt from one technology to another, starting from 180 nanometer, where I did my first design, to the last design I did 3 years back was in 7 nanometer, 2 years back is in 7 nanometer. I think the engineers are able to comfortably adapt across application segments, across process technology segments in terms of design ability, using an existing technology node, using the PDKs, designing products for the world, not only for India, but for the world. I think that's a major step India has achieved. Now, look at the other part of the pillar, and there were 3 components that was presented earlier. The second part is the software, particularly the embedded software which makes the product. India is an acknowledged world powerhouse when it comes to software in general, embedded software in particular. So that is the other strength that India has today. So what is the synergy? It's very obvious that we can, like what Joint Secretary said, we are ready to embrace, not handshake, both in design and in software. Now, let us look at the third component, which is the manufacturing. Okay, so this is where IESA is working very closely with the Ministry of Electronics and IT, with Mr. Gaur's department, almost on a daily basis, I can say. The number of meetings we hold every week is almost 1 per day. That's the level of interactions we have, and the government is very supportive of the suggestions and inputs that we give. So when it comes to manufacturing, I think we don't have to look anywhere else. I think India should look at Taiwan. Taiwan should look at India for a solid handshake, because Taiwan is an acknowledged powerhouse when it comes to manufacturing. both at the systems level as well as at the semiconductor level. Now, the question is, semiconductor being ubiquitous, and I don't want to go into the numbers because all the numbers have been spoken about, 40 billion strategic, 400 billion total. So I don't want to repeat those numbers again. But if a particular segment of a business is contributing close to 7-8% of the GDP, it has got significant potential. Today it is around 3.5%, but in about 5-6 years it is going to touch anywhere from 7 to 8% of the GDP, and that's a huge impact value. So that's where IESA recognizes the value of this segment of semiconductors and electronic systems, and we are working with the government to put the policies in place. But I think the TSRI Director General, Mr. Wen Kuan Yek, I hope I got the name correctly, was very correct in saying that at the end of the day, technology management means human resource management. Yeah. Without laying the foundation, without laying the building bricks for managing technology, which is human resources, it's not going to be possible in any stretch of imagination to become successful. So IESA's next thrust area is skill development. We are putting in place a comprehensive skill development plan, again, working with multiple organizations who have, at the end of the day, companies like MediaTek, companies like Intel, all of them have today talked to IESA. Hey, Krishna, we have a serious problem. What is it? We are not able to get enough engineers to do the projects. Particularly after the pandemic, when companies are coming out, launching new programs and projects, there is acute shortage of talented people. So this is not a problem that is going to go away by itself until we put processes and practices, very strong processes and practices, not necessarily only at the engineering schools, but maybe a little earlier. So we are coming up with a comprehensive proposal, and we'll work with the government, roll it out across the country before the end of this year. And that's going to be the pillar, the major pillar on which we will grow our semiconductor industry. Now, only one other aspect I would like to talk about. Dr. Saraswat talked about R&D fab is in the works. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. Once you have the talent development activities identified and addressed, proper processes put in place, the next one is to have an R&D fab. And I think that's an absolutely right step to go to. And newer technologies like gallium nitride, silicon germanium, FDSOI are also in consideration at different scales. Some of them like SENS in IISc, IIT Bombay, they have a SENS lab, which is not a commercial lab, but they have a very good R&D capability there. Similarly, there is a CMOS fab in FCL Chandigarh, which is currently used for strategic requirements. Bharat Electronics has a slightly older generation discrete components fab. And then, of course, DRDO also has its own, but all of them are R&D fabs or R&D centers where some amount of rudimentary development happens. But combining all this into a full-fledged R&D fab will probably be the first important step. And this is where I would expect companies and other fabs from Taiwan to come and join hands. And I think that will make a big difference. Because once the human resource requirements are addressed and we have an R&D fab, it will be mutually beneficial to both countries to grow on this. And particularly, I would like to mention here the geopolitical situation, which you are right in the middle of that. I think it mandates, I don't think we have an option, but I think it mandates for us to de-risk and also distribute capabilities geographically dispersed. And I think India will be a willing partner to work with you. And specifically to the fab, I think trying to do a 5 nanometer, 7 nanometer, or any of the FinFET nodes is probably not the right thing for India to go after at the moment. And I think discussions are happening with the ministry. There are divergent views, but that's perfectly okay. In a democracy, we would like to have as many views as possible. But in order of priority, maybe IESA will work with multiple entities to see whether we can get a good analog fab. I think Dr. Ye was also suggesting to that, identify a few application segments, identify some critical components as part of that, in which, in my opinion, particularly coming from National Semiconductor, Texas Instruments, and Rambus IP development kind of companies, I understand the value of critical IPs and special function devices, which a very good analog fab which does not require any of the FinFET nodes. It will be very comfortable with 65 or 40 or 45 or even 28. It's more than enough. That and a scalable CMOS fab, which probably starts at 40 and scales down to 20, 28 or 22, are the two fabs. If we can put it into operation in the next 2-3 years' time, probably India can create 80. India can meet 80% of its component demand out of this. Again, not in 2 years' time, but maybe it will take 5 years, may take 7 years. But the last 20% is where you need all the FinFET technologies or the foil technologies and stacked dies, special 3D packaging technologies and things like that. I think that's something which sensibly we can delay it. We will allow it to naturally grow into that, like exactly what TSMC did. What started as an ITRI lab today has become a global giant. It allowed to grow over a period of time, organically and naturally as the demand picked up. So in India probably will be looking into this. The other area where Taiwan and India can immediately do a handshake and an embrace is the ATMP, assembly, test, marking, and packaging. This again is something where we don't even have to wait for the fabs to happen. The wafers can come. We as a country, as a government level, we have to set systems and processes in place where within 36 hours of the wafer arriving at an Indian port, it should be out in a global warehouse. That kind of turnaround time, if we can assure, and at a lower price point, an ATMP will be very advantageous and very attractive to companies in Taiwan. I think this is another area of cooperation that I see we can work together immediately. I will stop here, and if there is another round of discussion possible in the time available, I will talk. But otherwise, we can always talk in later.